When I went to college, there was a public hiking trail that lots and lots of students would go to. And of course, everyone wanted to go at night because there's a tunnel at the beginning of the trail. It's big, it runs 1/4 of a mile long, and it's super creepy. The legends say that the place is haunted. The road to nowhere is believed to be haunted because the state was trying to build a road between 2 towns to make travel and moving produce faster. When they got all the correct permits, many of the people who owned the land were Native Americans and poor farmers. After taking their land and rendering many people homeless, they actually never finished building the road. And mind you, this place is full of old families, so they uprooted people who have had generations and generations of people living there. And this is obviously where the name The Road to Nowhere came from. Some more background. I grew up in church, but I'm not a prominent church goer as of now. I honestly don't have any religious beliefs. I just think we should all try and be nice and treat everyone the same. Basically, don't be an ass. One night, a group of friends and I decided to go to the Road to Nowhere to have a creepy college experience. We arrived at the site and started walking up the road, and everything was normal. We make it through the tunnel and to the other side, and we all started to goof off and have fun. We were also waiting on the other side for another group of friends that were coming in a different car. After about 20 minutes of being on the other side of the tunnel, I look back at the opening and see something that looks like someone holding a phone flashlight. Like you could see the silhouette of a person and everything. So I started calling out my friends' names and yelling inside jokes. I was immediately overcome with the feeling of dread. 1, they were not moving. You know how you can tell when people are normal? You can tell they are making small movements like breathing and moving their hands in a more comfortable position, and whoever this was not doing that. 2, they were not talking back to me. I also graduated with a degree having to do with the criminal justice system, so my immediate thought was that this was some maniac trying to hurt us. I turned around and told my friends we needed to leave, and right at that moment, the little phone flashlight shut off. Now I was really scared and wanted everyone to get out before someone started to try and shoot at us. We had a mag flashlight, so we shined it through the tunnel, because the tunnel is the only way back to the car. You could go over it, but you'd have to scale the mountain. Anyway, we make it through the tunnel into the parking lot. There are no other cars, and if anyone came down, we would have seen them. As we are making it to the car, we look back, and everyone sees the same light on the other side of the tunnel, with the person just standing there again. I honestly don't know if it was a spirit that used to live there, or maybe something else. Unfortunately, this experience made me question so much about what goes bump in the night, and I'm usually a skeptic. I can assure you it is not humanly possible to scale this mountain. You can even look the place up. It's called the Road to Nowhere in North Carolina. It's free, it's public, and has all the same rules and regulations that state parks usually administer. And if you do plan on visiting, please read their rules and see what kind of wildlife is around during that time of year. We've seen people not come back from hiking because of bears or mountain lions. My husband and I live not too far from a state park that we've been going to lately to walk in the afternoon. Yesterday was a really awesome day. The weather was perfect, and we felt great about getting our walk in. We're trying to lose weight. The park is pretty spread out, so by the time we get halfway through, we're pretty far from our vehicle. We're laughing and having a good time when a car pulls alongside us and just stares at the stroller I'm pushing, with my newborn son inside. My husband and I think it's super creepy and move along quickly, and the car takes off. We get across this bridge to another parking lot to discover the same car is parked by the trail we were taking. When we get somewhat close, 2 guys with little dogs get out and go in separate directions, and one sits in the driver's seat with the car running. We don't like this, but also know that we tend to be pretty paranoid. My husband is 6'5" and huge, who would willingly jack with him. The car stays put, much to our relief, and we make it to the end in about an hour. All is fine and dandy until we come back through to find that same car in a different parking lot. The two guys are again out walking their tiny dogs. These guys are about late 40s to early 50s. They look pretty rough and are staring directly at us. They jump in their car and head our way. By this time, we're super paranoid. I grabbed my husband, and we sit at a conveniently placed picnic table that is right off the road to wait them out. They just sit there at the stop sign, facing us, for about 2 minutes, until another car comes and forces them to move. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. We book it out of there with a death grip on the stroller. We get back over the bridge and guess who was sitting there. Yep, creepy stalker guys. We kept walking like we didn't notice, and my husband gets the license plate number. They're from out of state, and the make and model of the car. My husband has now had enough. We make it to the store that is halfway through the park, and he goes inside to call the police. I sit out front because my son is fussy, and my husband grabs an employee, always keeping an eye on me. He was in there for less than a minute. The creepers, all three this time, got out with their dogs and started walking around while keeping their distance, but still an eye shot. The sheriff told my husband to wait there, so we sit out front with one of the employees watching the creepers watching us. I think they got nervous with everyone around, so they drove across the road to another building there. They parked to where their car was facing directly at us. After about 20 minutes or so, the sheriff pulls in, and they zoom out of there fast. One of the employees comes out to talk to the sheriff, and says he was watching the car from inside the store, and one of the guys was standing behind their car watching us the whole time. We just couldn't see him from where we were. The sheriff takes off looking for them, but I doubt he found them because that place is a maze, and they went out the back way. In an odd way, I'm happy this happened to us instead of someone less paranoid. I have family members that take their little kids there all the time. I highly doubt they'd even notice someone following them. This whole ordeal lasted around 2.5 hours. I was so relieved to get my baby boy home. Things could have gone an entirely different way today. What started out as a simple walk on a nice day turned into a stalking and could have ended so badly. My husband and I thanked the sheriff and the store's employees profusely. I hate to think about what could have happened had they not been there or been so kind. The world is a crazy place. Be safe out there, and keep your children, family, and friends close. There's this nice park just a couple blocks from where I recently moved to. It's a place I've actually gone to my whole life, but now it's nearly every day since it's so close. There's this pond area where a child drowned several years back, and I never felt alone there. I always wondered if it was the child's spirit. One day, I didn't feel well and was just going to stay home, but I felt this urge to go to the park anyway. I didn't want to, but I had to. Quick thing, I've always been sensitive to the paranormal. I feel their emotions, and they affect me greatly. Growing up in a house that was haunted by something evil, well, I never really was myself until I got out. I have a usual route that I take, but I went somewhere else. I cut right over to the spot, feeling led there, almost like I wasn't even in control of myself. There's this ancient willow tree by a creek, and I've had a connection with it ever since I can remember. My brain was in a fog and I couldn't think. I didn't feel like myself. Not possessed, but heavily affected. All I knew is that I had to go down this overgrown path. So I did, and stopped dead in my tracks, just staring at the running water. I suddenly thought to myself in this secluded spot, something that wasn't my own thought. This is where I'd dump a body. I startled myself with that dark thought. My heart was pounding and I couldn't breathe. I was more terrified than I'd ever been in my life. Blind terror. I couldn't think or move. I felt like I might collapse or pass out, or that I was going to die. Then suddenly I looked down, and right before me, partially buried in the sand, was what I first thought was a rock. I was drawn to it and kicked at it. I knew not to touch it. After examining it, I saw it was clearly a vertebra. I'm not an expert, but I just knew it was human. Lots of research later, and asking my sister's in-law, who was a nurse, I was convinced it was human. The nurse urged me to call the police, so I did and showed them the spot, fighting to stay conscious the entire time. No word yet. Tests are slow in my city, but there's no doubt in my mind that it's human, and if they dig there'll be more to find. Looking at that bone while anxiety was coursing through me, I remember this reoccurring dream I had as a child, of standing on the bank of a river and looking down to find human remains, usually a skull. Too coincidental not to be connected, I personally think, especially since my dreams sometimes come true or are connected to future events. Also, that presence I felt by that pond, it was the same as the one that led me to the spot. I don't know if I'll ever get the answers I crave, but I know with absolute certainty what I experienced, and I just hope it's enough to eventually bring peace to the spirit who chose me, because I simply listened to its terrified, lost cries for help. I go back there all the time, never feeling alone, but not as panicky now, seeing its shadowy figure every now and then. Anytime I go to leave, I feel like it asks me to stay. And when I think, why me? The answer is, you're the only one who listened. Okay, so a friend and I were walking around a massive park in my town, and it was around 11 p.m. We were just walking around having a smoke and a laugh, being teenagers and stuff, and by this point it was pitch black. There's no lights in the park, and I'm a bit on edge, because I'm not keen on the dark, and I was kind of paranoid from the weed. But I'm just gonna cut to the interesting part. So me and my friend, let's call him Sam, are walking towards the swings, and we're like 10 feet from the edge of the park. And there's this unexplainable rancid smell that physically caused me to gag. We joke and say something about it being this girl from school that we don't like, and head into the park. The smell is only getting stronger, and I glance over at this small wall. There's a bench in front of it, and squatting behind the bench, but still at least 5 feet tall, was what looked to be a freakishly tall guy, but he appeared to be naked and hairless. We both kind of stared for a minute, before looking at each other as if to say, "Yo, you can see that, right?" And the thing started laughing like a 4-year-old girl. We noped the fuck out of there and ran like our lives depended on it. They might have. We went home and just laughed it off and tried to forget about it. That was weeks ago, and I'm still spooked, and I refuse to go near that park after dark. Can anyone help me figure out what I saw? This happened in 2010. I live in a small city where I was born and raised. On this day, it's a cool, crisp spring morning, and a big test is on my mind. Clenched tightly in my hands is a course review, and I'm going over it repetitively, trying to make the information stick in my head. But I'm struggling to grasp the basic theories in my half-sleep stupor as I walk down the street. The sun is out, and it's practically blinding me. As I'm reading, my body starts to sway, and I catch myself before I fall over. I scold myself for being clumsy. Near the end of the block, I hear someone coming from behind me in the distance, footsteps getting louder. I quickly move to the side, hold on tight to my papers, close my eyes and hear their feet hitting the cement right behind me. Then silence. I have a look around. I see that there is no one near me, no one on the other side of the street, or even on the same block as me for that matter. What the hell? That's weird. Continuing my trek, I cross the street and venture onto the second block before the park, which leads to the bridge, all the while still trying to memorize my notes. As I enter the small park, I look at my surroundings and am relieved to see that there are no weirdos lying around, or little children from the neighboring daycare present to get underfoot. My thoughts shift back to my papers, and I carry on with my review. Shortly thereafter, as I near the end of the park, I hear someone in the distance. They're running through the grass and onto the sidewalk behind me. As I approach the bridge staircase, I quickly move to the side because I don't want to get trampled on. Again, the footsteps come up behind me, and then they cease. No one passes by, and everything becomes quiet again. Immediately, I do a 360 and see no one. Just keep walking, I thought. Climbing up the flight of concrete stairs, the morning traffic greets me, and I start walking north on the downtown bridge. I don't have time for this, I think to myself, and start reading my notes out loud. The bridge is so noisy that I can't hear myself think, but I continue reading. Once I reach the staircase on the opposite side of the bridge, all my thoughts are now focused back on my test. Stick in my head, I'm telling myself. Soon enough, my destination is reached, and I write my test. I feel relieved that the day is over, and forget all about what happened earlier. As I'm heading home, heading south on the same bridge, it is now just after noon. I'm hungry for lunch, and all my energy was spent on concentrating. The sun is shining overhead. The weather is now warmer, and I'm carrying my coat in my arms. As I near the halfway point on the bridge, I hear someone walking behind me. Suddenly, remembering the events of that morning, my heart races, and I slowly glance over my right shoulder, which is towards the street, and see a tall, slim man with very long black hair, wearing an older-style tracksuit from the 90s. Relieved that there was a source for the footsteps I heard, I continued my walk, and my heartbeat returns to normal. After I calm down, something tells me to look over my left side and into the river, so I look down to my left. There, in the water, I could see my shadow and the shadow of the bridge, but no shadow for the person behind me, yet I could still hear his footsteps. Once I arrived at the staircase leading back towards the park, I mustered all my courage and quickly turned around to look at this person face to face. What I saw was no one, that there was nobody on the bridge, just me. And even though I was startled, I did not feel particularly scared. The next week, I told an elder what happened and asked him what it meant. He just chuckled and said that someone was protecting me. This happened last year when I was 17. I'm a female. Some important details. We have a large, young dog who has bundles of energy and loves to play. So my family would take him to a local dog park almost every day, weather permitting. He's 95 pounds, and the absolute sweetest dog in the world, but unfortunately does not know his own size. He still does the puppy mouth obsession thing, play biting and grabbing onto collars. We discourage this behavior, but many people don't mind as they know that's how dogs play, and we reassure them that he would never hurt them. We've had a few instances where the dog he was playing with started to squeal. Not because he was hurting them, they just got scared, and we would quickly grab him and apologize. It was usually never an issue and was not a frequent problem. My grandfather had just died and my mom was in Louisiana with my grandmother, and I was driving there a couple days later. I was really broken up about it and decided to take my dogs to the park to calm down. Now, since we went so much, we knew all of the other regulars very well, and whenever there was an issue with my dog and another person, they would always have my back. That day, however, none of the regulars were there, except for one person I knew well who left a couple minutes before the incident. This older lady I hadn't seen before had brought her very small dog to the park, which was fine, but as it is mainly a place for larger dogs, The owners have to be cautious. My dog really likes smaller dogs and took an interest in this one, who was not having it. She started to publicly berate me, and one other woman finally told her they were just playing. The old lady was still being quite rude the whole time, but finally sat down, and I just ignored her and kept my dog away. As annoying as she was, I could have just ignored this behavior, and maybe it wouldn't have ended up encouraging the situation later on. A man I had seen before came with his dog, who was medium-sized, and my dog wanted to play. He was trying to wrestle, and the other dog kept growling at him. And when I called my dog to get off, the other dog leaped after him and bit him, which my dog took as a sign he wanted to play. He's a dumb puppy. I told the man I was sorry and we were leaving, and as I was grabbing him, the man kicked my dog. I was not happy about this, and full of emotions from my grandfather's passing, and told him not to touch my dog. He said my dog was a problem and we needed to go, which I reminded him we were, and that his dog is the one who bit mine, not the other way around. This unleashed a wrath I have never witnessed before. He got up in my face, trying to back me against the fence, and started screaming at me. The lady who had been bothering me before decided to get involved, and screamed that me and my dog were a danger and we had to leave. I ignored her, but she was egging the man on. Just for a visual, he looked like an ugly version of Brock from the show Reba, and smaller, but still much larger than I was. He started to scream that he was going to kill my dog, and that if I got in the way, he would beat the shit out of me too. I didn't want him to know I was frightened, and screamed back at him that he shouldn't dare lay a hand on my dog. His threats kept getting more and more physical, and I backed away, telling him I was just a 17-year-old girl, to which he responded,
"I don't give a fuck how old you are. I'll do whatever I want to you and your dog."
The lady who had intervened earlier tried to lightly interject, but he ignored her, following behind me as I went to get my dog, who had run off during his screaming. The old lady who had been yelling too didn't back down from her stance, but was a tad bit nicer as I was walking by, probably since she realized she was encouraging a man who was threatening to kill a teenager in a dog park. She told me to control my dog, and I told her to control her attitude as we were leaving. The man then attempted to corner me again, saying he was calling the cops, and I told him I wished he would, and called him a middle-aged psycho. He followed me to my car, saying he was going to get me arrested. I've truly never been so afraid that I was going to be attacked as I was then. There were around 5 other people there, but nobody really tried to intervene, especially since I was shouting back, I'm sure. I got my dogs in the car. I had taken my other dog with me too, who luckily was not involved in the kicking and yelling. I drove to a different parking lot at the front of the church and called my mom, sobbing. I texted one of the regulars at the dog park, who told me to call the police, which I did, and they took down a report. All of the regulars soon got wind of the incident and were all on the lookout for the man, who according to them and my parents, who still go frequently, has never returned after that episode. I'm still too afraid to ever go back there again thanks to that man. I hope I never have to meet that crazy fucker ever again. I asked my mother to share this story that happened to her when she was a kid. This is what she wrote. I don't like to talk about this story much. In fact, I've only told my husband and my 2 kids. To this day, this story gives me chills. All of this happened over the course of about 2 weeks during summer vacation when I was in high school. One day, my best friend and I were messing around in my parents' garage, where they stored a ton of random stuff. Spider webs were everywhere, and there was a ton of boxes, some half open, spilling board games and baby toys all over the place. There was old, rusty, or broken things lying around everywhere. We were about to go inside when my friend grabbed something that caught her eye, an old, taped-up Parker Brothers box with big, bold lettering that read, Ouija. It was yellowing at the sides. We brought it into the house. Being teens, we thought it would be funny. As we started to mess with it, we would joke by pushing it around ourselves. Then we said hello. Nothing. Is anyone here with us? We laughed. Nothing. We would love if someone would talk to us. The planchette flew out of our fingers, off the board, and slammed into the cabinets across the kitchen table. I was terrified, frozen. My friend grabbed the planchette and shoved it back into the box. I followed her out to the garage where she shoved it into another box near the door. We didn't talk about it all night. After she went home, I just stayed in my bedroom until morning. About a week went by, and me and my friend still hadn't talked about it. Then she called me. Marge is having a sleepover. She wants you to come and bring the board. After what happened last week, I didn't want to touch the board, but I didn't have to play with it at the sleepover if I didn't want to. So I went out to the garage, grabbed the board, and hid it in my pillow. I asked my parents if I could sleep at Marge's, and of course they said yes. They always did. I changed into my PJs, grabbed my pillow and a blanket, and left. Marge lived only a few houses down. Once I got there, they wanted to play with the board immediately. Marge had never played with one before, so she was excited. I said I didn't want to play, and even with their pestering and teasing, I still said no. They laid it out on the floor and began. I sat on the couch just watching. Then they started talking to someone, or something. They asked it its name. To this day, I will not repeat it. They asked if it was nice or mean. No response. It said it wouldn't play unless I did. I thought my friends were just trying to be funny, so I said I would play if it could tell me something no one else knew. The board spelled Eric. How did it know that? Eric was the name of my crush. Respecting my promise, I sat down and began to play.
Do you want to meet?
Of course, my friends say yes. Every part of me is saying no, but I reluctantly agreed. Later, Marge asked if her mother could take us all to Disneyland the next day. We only lived about 20 minutes from it, and we could call our parents on our phone to ask. My parents knew Marge's very well, so they agreed. After our day at Disneyland, everyone had gone home and it was only me and my best friend left. We were sitting in the lobby of the Disneyland Hotel, where our parents would pick us up, when a man dressed in gray sweatpants and a black hoodie walked up to us. He was extremely pale.
Where are the cabanas?
He asked. I knew perfectly well there are no cabanas at Disneyland. What are you talking about? I asked.
The cabanas. I'm late for a party my friend is having there.
You can try heading over by the pool. Right before he left, he told us.
You can join me if you like.
No thanks, our parents are coming. It was weird, but we shook it off. The next day, my friends were playing with the Ouija board at the park near my house. We were sitting under a tree. He's back, my friend said. I wasn't paying attention to the game until the planchette spelled hotel. In that moment, my friend and I realized that it was him that we met in the Disneyland Hotel. I became scared. I said I wanted him to go away and to stop bothering us. I asked my friends to say goodbye and to put the board away. I said I hated him. I yelled, "Fuck you. Don't you have anything better to do than mess with teenage girls?" Then the planchette moved.
I'll take your firstborn.
This wasn't funny. I told them to stop it. Then I saw the fear register on their faces. They instantly said goodbye and put the board away. My best friend broke the board over her knee. I cried. I went home and cried. That was real. I was scared. As years went on, I forgot about this until I had my firstborn. He was diagnosed with hypoplastic left heart syndrome at birth. It wasn't until he was dying in my arms at just 4 years old that I remembered the board and the message that thing, whatever it was, sent. I pray that my son is in heaven, safe, but don't blame me for being so unsure about that. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. The next couple of themes I have for true scary stories are pizza and storm. So, if you have something weird or scary or creepy that happened in one of those two things, even if something crazy happened hours after you ate pizza, or if you were a pizza delivery guy, or whatever, something crazy happened during a storm, send it to me. Even if you don't think you're a great writer, because I'll edit it on the fly. I gotta do that a lot. And don't just go to Reddit or wherever and take a story and then send it to me, because I want permission to do it. So send me some stuff. Even if it doesn't fit into those two things, those are just my next two. And between those will be creepypastas. And send me some of those. Send them to TheDevilsInterval@gmail.com. But the E's are threes. I mean, shit, you could just write me to say what's up. And I've never, begged you guys to like and subscribe every video, because I hate that. But what I do want to do is say that if you dig me and what I do, tell somebody. If your buddy likes scary stories, tell them, hey, I like this guy. And another thing is, I'm going to have some shirts going here soon, because I want my own. It'd be cool to do stickers or something too, but I got to figure that out. So if you'd be interested in that, let me know. And I've been thinking I might even try to do some live streams. I got to figure that out too. So anyway, I'm done with my speech for this one. I got Ripley some all-natural milk bones. So let's see if she likes them. What is that? You like that? Oh, they smell good. Let me taste one here. Wow, this is awesome. These are for the daddy. You can have one, but these are daddy's food. I eat the water. Once you pop, you can't stop. You know what I'm saying? Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Corey Rhino. And be good to animals, even people. Sup?
Yo, snämma, bärksbus, rish.
Do you like that? You like the pretzel? Here, you want one? You dirty ass. You got a dirty ass. My husband and off to a great start.